Most people think they are in love. In reality, they are afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of being replaced. Afraid of losing the one thing that makes them feel chosen. Fear can feel intense. It can feel passionate. But intensity is not depth. True love is quieter than most people expect. It does not beg. It does not chase. It does not collapse at the thought of loss. It stands. This video is not about how to keep someone. It is about how to know whether you are loving from strength or from fear. Because the way you love reveals who you are. And once you recognize the difference, you can never unsee it. Stay with me. What you are about to hear may not make love easier, but it will make it true. Welcome to the channel, Stoic Love Wisdom. This is where every story and lesson about love will help you find the answer. Today, we will explore a new perspective through the topic, 6 signs that show you're in love based on reason, not fear. These are real-life experiences and profound lessons that will change the way you perceive love. Follow me, because the most surprising and interesting things are still waiting for you ahead. Before starting, find a quiet place, put on your headphones and relax your mind. Let the sharing in this video help you feel more fully and enjoy every meaningful moment. Are you ready to embark on this journey? Let's begin. Sign number 1, you are no longer afraid of losing them. I have learned this the hard way. Real love begins the moment fear loses its power over you. When you love someone out of fear, every day feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. You watch their tone. You analyze their silence. You adjust yourself constantly, hoping not to be the reason they leave. I lived there once. And I can tell you this with certainty. That was not love. It was survival. Loving with reason does not mean you love less. It means you love without trembling. When you are no longer afraid of losing someone, something profound changes inside you. You stop negotiating your dignity for reassurance. You stop over-explaining yourself just to be understood. You stop apologizing for having boundaries. This is not emotional detachment. This is emotional sovereignty. You still care. You still invest. But your inner balance no longer depends on whether they stay or leave. A man who loves with fear is always trying to secure the future. A man who loves with reason is fully present, because he knows he will survive either outcome. This shift does not happen overnight. It is earned through pain, disappointment, and self-reflection. At some point in your life, you realize something uncomfortable but freeing. No one is guaranteed to stay. Not because people are evil, but because life changes people. When you truly accept this, you stop clinging. And paradoxically, this is when love becomes strongest. You no longer say, I need you. You say, I choose you. There is a quiet confidence in a man who is not afraid of loss. He does not threaten. He does not beg. He does not manipulate emotions to keep someone close. He understands that love offered under pressure is not love, it is captivity. Stoic love teaches us a simple truth. What is not within your control should never own your peace. You cannot control another person's feelings, loyalty, or future decisions. But you can control your character, your standards, and how you respond. When you love with reason, you stop trying to bind someone to you emotionally. You allow them to stay freely. And here is the paradox most people miss. Freedom is what makes love meaningful. If someone stays because they are afraid to lose you, they are not staying for love. They are staying to avoid pain. But when someone stays because you do not trap them, that is devotion. A man who is no longer afraid of losing her speaks differently. His words are honest, not strategic. His silence is calm, not anxious. His presence is grounded. He no longer asks, Will this push her away? He asks. Is this true to who I am? And if being himself causes her to leave, he lets her go. Not with bitterness. Not with resentment. But with dignity. Because he understands this fundamental Stoic principle. Nothing truly valuable can be forced to remain. Loss no longer terrifies him. Because he has already lost before, and survived. He knows that the pain of losing someone is far less destructive than the pain of losing himself. This is why loving with reason feels calm, not chaotic. Deep, not desperate. Strong, not loud. You stop trying to be irreplaceable. You focus on being whole. And when you are whole, anyone who walks away leaves a space. But not a wound that defines you. So if you find yourself able to say, honestly, I would miss them, but I would still be me. Then understand this. You are no longer loving from fear. You are loving from strength. And that is the first sign that your love has matured into wisdom. Sign number 2, you speak the truth, even when silence would be easier. There was a time when I believed silence was wisdom. I thought keeping the peace meant avoiding uncomfortable truths. I thought love meant adapting, softening myself, cutting pieces off my honesty so the relationship could survive. I was wrong. Silence born from fear is not maturity. It is self-betrayal disguised as patience. When you love from fear, you speak carefully, not honestly. You rehearse your words in your head. You dilute your feelings. You swallow discomfort because you are afraid that truth might cost you the relationship. So you choose quiet compliance over authentic connection. But loving with reason changes this completely. You no longer speak to maintain attachment. You speak to maintain integrity. A man who loves with reason understands something simple but profound. Truth may cause conflict, but avoidance causes decay. When you stop fearing loss, you stop fearing honest conversations. You no longer measure every sentence by how it will be received. You measure it by whether it is real. This does not mean you become harsh or careless with words. Stoic love is not brutal honesty. It is calm, deliberate truth spoken without emotional manipulation. You speak not to win. Not to dominate. Not to provoke. You speak because clarity is respect. In fearful love, conversations feel like negotiations. You trade honesty for reassurance. You say what sounds safe instead of what feels true. In rational love, conversations feel grounded. There is no hidden agenda. No emotional bargaining. You say, this is what I feel. This is what I need. This is where my boundary is. And then, you let the outcome be what it is. This is where most people panic. They think, if I say this, she might leave. And that fear keeps them silent for months, sometimes years. But a man who has learned through loss knows something deeper. If truth drives someone away, the relationship was already unsustainable. Silence delays endings. Truth reveals them. And revelation, though painful, is mercy. When you speak honestly, you stop performing a version of yourself designed to be loved. You allow yourself to be seen. And that is terrifying. Because visibility means vulnerability. But it is also liberating. A Stoic man understands that his responsibility is not to control how others react, but to ensure his actions align with his values. He does not explode emotionally. He does not suppress himself either. He speaks calmly, directly, without apology for his truth, and without hostility toward theirs. This kind of honesty creates a quiet power. It tells the other person, I respect you enough to be real. And I respect myself enough to stand by what I say. You no longer walk on eggshells. You walk with intention. You stop confusing harmony with avoidance. True harmony is not the absence of tension. It is the presence of mutual respect. And yes, sometimes truth leads to conflict. Sometimes it leads to distance. Sometimes it leads to endings. But here is what fear-based love never tells you. Conflict handled with honesty strengthens the right relationships and dissolves the wrong ones. Both outcomes are victories. A man who loves with reason does not fear disagreement. He fears self-deception. He would rather face a difficult conversation today than live a quiet resentment tomorrow. Because resentment does not disappear. It hardens. It poisons intimacy. And eventually, it erodes love from the inside out. When you speak truth without fear, your voice slows down. Your body relaxes. You no longer feel the need to convince. You state your reality, and release the need for control. That is Stoic love. Not attachment. Not dependence. But alignment. So if you notice that you no longer hide your thoughts to keep someone close. If you find yourself choosing honesty even when your voice trembles. If you are willing to let the truth stand without chasing the outcome. Then understand this. You are no longer loving from fear. You are loving from self-respect. And that is the second sign. That your love has grown beyond survival. And into strength. Have you ever realized that, in love, moments of silence are sometimes more powerful than 1,000 words? Because in silence, we can hear our heartbeat more clearly and feel the presence of the other person more deeply. Here, I want to explore with you that strength, peace, and stability even when love goes through challenges. If you feel that these shares bring you something positive, please click like to support. And if you haven't clicked subscribe, do it now, so you don't miss any insight into love and maturity. I also hope to hear your story. What is the most valuable lesson that love has taught you? Please share in the comments section so we can learn and be inspired together. Come on, let's move on to the next part with a more prepared mind. Sign number 3, you no longer try to control them. Control is born from fear. Trust is born from strength. Most people confuse control with care. They say they worry. They say they just want to understand. But beneath that concern often lies a quiet panic, the fear of being replaced, forgotten, or abandoned. I've been there. Checking messages too often. Reading meaning into silence. Needing constant reassurance that I still mattered. At the time, I told myself it was love. It wasn't. It was fear wearing the mask of devotion. When you love from fear, you try to reduce uncertainty. You want predictability. You want guarantees. So you monitor. You question. You subtly restrict freedom, not with force, but with emotional pressure. But loving with reason strips that illusion away. A man who loves with reason understands this truth. Another person is not something to be managed. You cannot supervise loyalty. You cannot negotiate genuine desire. You cannot secure love through vigilance. When you stop fearing loss, you stop trying to control outcomes. You don't need to know where they are every hour. You don't feel threatened by their independence. You don't interpret their freedom as distance. Because your sense of worth is no longer outsourced to their behavior. This is the quiet confidence of Stoic love. You trust, not because you are naive. But because you understand the alternative is exhausting. Control creates tension. Trust creates space. And space is where love breathes. A man who no longer controls does not mean a man who does not care. He still notices. He still listens. He still observes patterns. But he does not react impulsively. He understands the Stoic principle. Focus only on what is within your power. Your values. Your boundaries. Your responses. Not their choices. Not their moods. Not their future decisions. When you stop trying to control someone, you stop living in constant alert mode. Your nervous system calms down. Your presence becomes steady. You are no longer on guard. And this changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. Control creates resistance. Trust invites closeness. A woman can feel when she is being watched instead of trusted. When she is being evaluated instead of accepted. Control suffocates attraction. Trust amplifies it. But here is the hardest truth most men avoid. If someone wants to betray you, control will not stop them. And if someone wants to stay, they don't need surveillance. Once you accept this, control loses its purpose. You stop asking, "Where is this going?" And start asking, "Is this aligned with who I am?" A Stoic man does not cling to certainty. He builds resilience. He knows that loss is survivable. But self-respect lost to fear is far more costly. So he allows freedom. Not as a test. Not as a tactic. But as a natural consequence of strength. He does not threaten to leave to regain power. He does not demand reassurance to soothe insecurity. He simply observes. And if behavior consistently violates his values, he acts. Calmly. Decisively. Without drama. This is what makes him dangerous in the best sense of the word. Not because he controls. But because he can walk away. A man who can walk away does not need to control. And paradoxically, this is what makes people stay. Not fear. Not obligation. But respect. So if you notice that you no longer feel the urge to monitor. If you allow them to live fully without anxiety tightening your chest. If you trust their choices without abandoning your standards. Then understand this. You are no longer loving from insecurity. You are loving from inner stability. And that is the third sign. That your love is guided by reason. Not fear. Sign number 4, you love deeply without losing yourself. When love is driven by fear, identity becomes negotiable. You slowly reshape yourself. Not because you grow, but because you are afraid to be left behind. I have watched men disappear inside relationships. Their routines fade. Their convictions soften. Their world shrinks until love becomes the only axis they revolve around. They call it devotion. In truth, it is self-erasure. Loving with reason is different. You do not dilute yourself to be accepted. You do not abandon your principles to preserve harmony. You do not trade your inner life for emotional security. You remain yourself, fully. A Stoic man understands this clearly. Love should expand your life, not consume it. When you love from fear, you merge identities. Your happiness becomes dependent. Your emotional state mirrors theirs. If they are distant, you collapse. If they are warm, you rise. This is not intimacy. It is emotional instability. Loving with reason restores separation, not distance, but distinction. You can be close without being absorbed. Connected without being dependent. You still have your work. Your discipline. Your friendships. Your solitude. And these are not threats to the relationship. They are what make you whole. A man who has lost himself in love knows the cost. Resentment builds quietly. Desire fades. Respect erodes. Because nothing is less attractive than a man who has abandoned his center. Stoic love teaches that self-mastery precedes connection. If you cannot stand firmly alone, you will cling in partnership. So when you love with reason, you guard your inner structure. You do not sacrifice your truth to avoid conflict. You do not ignore discomfort to preserve attachment. You speak. You act. You decide. Not impulsively, but deliberately. This does not mean you are rigid or emotionally distant. On the contrary, you become more capable of love. Because love offered by someone who has not lost himself is clean, grounded, stable. You give affection freely, not desperately. You support without suffocating. You commit without collapsing. And when compromise is needed, it is conscious, not coerced. There is a quiet dignity in a man who knows where he ends and the relationship begins. He does not seek validation to confirm his worth. He does not need constant reassurance to feel secure. His sense of self is not under negotiation. This is where many relationships fail. One person grows. The other dissolves. Balance is lost. But a man who loves with reason refuses that path. He chooses growth over comfort. Integrity over attachment. Wholeness over fusion. And here is the paradox most never understand. By not losing yourself, you become easier to love. You bring stability into the relationship. You bring clarity. You bring direction. You are not emotionally reactive. You are emotionally reliable. And if the relationship begins to demand your self-betrayal, if love requires you to abandon your values, your purpose, your inner order, you do not rage. You do not plead. You recognize the truth quietly. And you choose yourself. Not because you love less, but because you love correctly. Stoicism does not teach detachment from love. It teaches detachment from what destroys your character. So if you notice that you can love fully without shrinking, if you remain grounded in who you are even in emotional intensity, if your life continues to grow, not narrow, within love, then understand this. You are no longer loving to be completed. You are loving as someone already complete. And that is the fourth sign. That your love is guided by reason. Not fear. In love, sometimes silence is the answer. It gives us time to listen to ourselves and understand the other person's heart better. That's also the reason I share stories on this channel, so that you have a pause, a peaceful space to reflect. If you find this meaningful, please click like and don't forget to subscribe, so that we can continue to accompany each other on the journey to find a peaceful and profound love. Now, let's continue the rest with me. Sign number 5, you are willing to let go when staying becomes self-betrayal. There is a kind of strength that does not raise its voice. It does not argue. It does not beg. It simply knows when to leave. Most people stay too long in relationships not because they are in love, but because they are afraid of what comes after. They fear loneliness. They fear regret. They fear the silence that follows separation. So they endure what slowly erodes them. They call it loyalty. In truth, it is avoidance. Loving with reason introduces a different standard. You no longer ask, how much can I tolerate? You ask, how much does this cost my integrity? A Stoic man understands this deeply. Love should never require self-betrayal. When staying demands that you suppress your values, ignore repeated disrespect, or abandon your sense of self, staying is no longer an act of love. It is an act of fear. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop sacrificing yourself to keep something alive that no longer nourishes you. This is one of the hardest lessons a man learns. Because walking away feels like failure. Until you realize that staying was slowly destroying you. A man who loves with fear clings to potential. He stays for what could be. He endures pain today for a future that never arrives. A man who loves with reason respects reality. He observes patterns, not promises. He listens to actions, not apologies. And when the evidence becomes clear, he acts. Not impulsively. Not dramatically. But decisively. There is no need for long speeches. No need for ultimatums. The decision to leave has already been made internally. This is Stoic discipline. You do not try to change someone who shows you who they are. You adjust your participation. Letting go is not weakness. It is the refusal to live in denial. A man who can leave with calm understands that endings are not punishments. They are corrections. He knows that enduring the wrong relationship teaches the wrong lesson. That love is supposed to hurt. Stoic love rejects that belief. Pain can happen in love. But degradation should not. So when the relationship becomes a negotiation against your self-respect, you choose distance. Not to provoke regret. Not to seek validation. But to protect your inner order. You grieve privately. You process slowly. You accept the loss fully. There is no performative suffering. Because you know that grief is not something to weaponize. You do not demonize the other person. You do not rewrite history. You simply accept that alignment has been lost. And this acceptance is power. A man who can walk away without hatred is a dangerous man. Not to others. But to illusion. He does not romanticize suffering. He does not cling to memories to justify staying. He understands that love is not proven by how much pain you endure, but by how honestly you live. Letting go requires courage most people never develop. It means choosing uncertainty over familiar misery. Solitude over silent resentment. Dignity over attachment. And once you have done it, once, you are changed. You no longer fear endings. You respect them. Because you know you will survive them. So if you find yourself able to say, calmly, this no longer aligns with who I am, and walk away without hatred or drama. If you can let go without needing the other person to understand, then understand this. You are no longer loving from fear. You are loving from self-respect. And that is the fifth sign. That your love has matured into wisdom. Sign number 6, you love because you choose to, not because you need to. Need is loud. Choice is quiet. Most people do not fall in love, they attach. They seek relief from loneliness, validation for their worth, or escape from inner emptiness. They mistake intensity for depth. Urgency for commitment. Dependency for devotion. I did too, once. But loving with reason dismantles this illusion. When you love because you need someone, fear governs every interaction. You monitor their availability. You measure their affection. You panic at distance. Because losing them feels like losing oxygen. This is not love. This is emotional survival. A Stoic man learns to sit with himself first. He confronts his solitude without distraction. He builds a life that does not collapse in silence. He becomes familiar with his own mind. Only then does love become a choice, not a necessity. When you love from choice, you are not looking to be saved. You are offering companionship. You are not searching for completion. You are sharing completeness. This changes everything. Your affection is calm. Your presence is steady. Your commitment is intentional. You do not rush intimacy to secure attachment. You allow connection to develop naturally. Because you are not afraid of being alone. A man who loves because he chooses to is not driven by scarcity. He does not fear that this is his last chance. He does not tolerate misalignment out of desperation. He understands abundance, not in options, but in self-sufficiency. Stoic love teaches us that the greatest freedom in love is not being needed. Needing someone gives them power over your emotional state. Choosing someone keeps that power within you. You stay because you want to. You leave because you decide to. And both choices are yours. This does not make you indifferent. It makes you intentional. You still invest emotionally. You still commit fully. But your commitment is grounded in clarity, not fear. When challenges arise, you do not panic. You assess. When distance appears, you do not chase. You observe. You trust that if alignment remains, closeness will return. And if it doesn't, you will still be whole. This is the quiet confidence that makes love feel safe. A woman feels it immediately. She is not being leaned on. She is being chosen. There is no pressure to perform. No obligation to fill a void. Just presence. This is why loving from choice creates the deepest bonds. Because freedom is built into the relationship. You are together not because either of you must be, but because both of you want to be. And if one day that choice changes, you accept it without collapse. Not without sadness, but without self-destruction. You understand that love is an experience, not an identity. It enriches your life, but it does not define your worth. This is the final stage of mature love. Not obsession. Not dependency. Not sacrifice without limits. But conscious participation. So if you find yourself loving calmly, staying without fear, and knowing that even in loss, you will remain intact, then understand this. You are no longer loving to survive. You are loving to share. And that is the final sign. That your love is guided by reason. Not fear. Conclusion. Loving with reason is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming grounded. Fear-based love is loud, restless, and exhausting. It clings, negotiates, and constantly asks for reassurance. It fears loss more than it respects truth. But love rooted in reason is different. It is quiet, steady, unshaken by uncertainty. A man who loves with reason does not seek to be completed by another. He comes whole. He offers presence, not dependence. Choice, not necessity. He is not afraid to speak the truth. Not afraid to give freedom. Not afraid to walk away when staying would cost his integrity. This does not make his love weaker. It makes it rare. Because most people love from fear. They attach to avoid loneliness. They compromise themselves to avoid endings. But a man who has learned to love with reason understands this final truth. The quality of your love is determined by the quality of your self-respect. When fear no longer governs your actions, love becomes a place of peace rather than anxiety. Connection becomes a sharing, not a transaction. Commitment becomes intentional, not desperate. You no longer love to be saved. You love to give. And whether love stays or leaves, you remain standing. This is not emotional detachment. This is emotional maturity. To love without fear is not to guarantee happiness. It is to guarantee dignity. And in the long run, dignity is what makes love worth having. Thank you for watching today's video. I'm so happy to share my lessons about love and relationships with you. I hope you learned something new and can apply it to your life. If you find the video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for always accompanying and supporting me. Wish you a good day and don't forget to love yourself a lot.